Can people hear us or can they not?
Yeah, I think, we are live now. So please go
Awesome.
ahead.
So, hello and welcome to today's webinar. Today we will be discussing the topic of Cloud Migration Factory and how it can simplify enterprise cloud migrations. We know that, these projects can be quite time consuming, money consuming, and nerve consuming. So it would be good to, simplify them in a way. I'm your host Felician, and I'm the marketing manager at Maxima Consulting, where we help global companies solve their IT problems. And today in here with me is Regit Krishnan, the CEO of Cloud Control. Regit, please tell the audience a bit about yourself and your company.
Thank you. Thanks, Felician. So my name is Rajat Krishnan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cloud Control. So we are a cloud migration and management company. So we help enterprises adopt cloud, both from a greenfield standpoint. That means if you have a new application development, we can set up the landing zone and get you up and running in a matter of days with all the security and the best practices in place. We also help migrate existing applications, legacy applications for enterprises and small businesses, where we take applications that are already running in a non-cloud environment, a private infrastructure. We help migrate them to cloud and leverage the benefits of the cloud. So today we're going to talk about cloud migration, right?
Yep. Cloud Migration Factory, exactly. So the first time you mentioned this topic, I was wondering, what is it? Like, really, how is it different from all the other approaches? So can you explain what exactly a Cloud Migration Factory is and what's the difference?
Sure. So I put together a few slides. So number one, what is a cloud migration factory, right? So and why do we need it? So the factory is basically a well-organized method. It's teams working together to transform the organization's infrastructure, applications, data from on-premises to a cloud-based environment. When I say cloud, it could be AWS, Azure, Google, even now Oracle is a major player. So the idea is to take use a repeatable process, efficient process, take the applications that are running on-prem and move them into the cloud in a well-organized manner. And while doing that, we want to leverage the cloud automation. We want to leverage standardized processes and best practices. And the idea is to make it as efficient as possible. For example, our team altogether has migrated more than 350 plus applications using our process, and we'll get a bit more deep into that as we go forward.
Awesome. So how is this process different, actually?
So when I look at the enterprises that I deal with, they use different approaches. One of the very common approach, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, is when you give the developers, the application owners or the developers, the option to just use the cloud the way they want it. The challenge there is the developers will have to learn the skills and ensure that each application, so let's say you have 10 applications or 100 applications, this might be managed by 10 developers or 100 developers. So everyone will have different perspective in terms of how their application should work in the cloud. So this becomes a nightmare if each of them takes different path to get to the cloud. So for an enterprise, it's always better to be organized, use a repeatable process, apply all the standards and best practices and compliance and regulatory requirements into the process, and let the developers follow that process. So a factory is where you can achieve that. That's an approach where we put together a plan, put together a process, put together all the compliance requirements, and ensure that there is a repeatable process. Every application in the pipeline is getting moved in a similar way with achieving the same goals in terms of security, performance, observability, and automation.
Like, that's one thing that a repeatable process in place can have a tremendous impact on the whole company and its operations. Because especially if you operate on a global scale and you have different teams that are spread across the world, it will be very difficult to really align everybody. So you have to have those processes in place. And
That is right. So I've seen enterprises making mistake of giving the development team or the application team their way of moving the applications to the cloud. So what happens is, first of all, it's very inefficient because there are a lot of commonalities that you can be managed in a central way that every developer is going to do, and that's going to chew up a lot of time and effort, and they can make mistakes. So I think Forbes did a study, and they came with the number which is kind of crazy. They 80% of the migrations fail or don't achieve or don't um, finish on time. The reason is exactly that, because when the developers, as an application owner, when they look at cloud, they look at it from their perspective and will have a different approach than the team sitting next to them. So that creates a problem. Sometimes they even conflict when it goes into the cloud. So things won't move as planned, and it will become a big failure or a mess. So what a factory does is we put the effort upfront in planning it out and ensuring that it's a repeatable process that will fit all the company's enterprise requirements as well as the application requirements and all the technology requirements, and then come up with a plan and then use a repeatable process that you can repeat as many number of times for maximum efficiency.
yeah, so basically with a cloud migration factory, you get all the same benefits, but your chances of success are much bigger.
Much more higher. That's right.
Okay. So could you explain, what are the key advantages of adopting a cloud migration factory for cloud migrations?
Right. So I have two slides here to cover that. One of them is very basic. Why move to cloud at all, right? So the reason why we move into cloud is because we want speed in time to market. We want lower cost of ownership. We want speed and agility in terms of putting features out. You want to enhance collaboration, improve security and reliability, and also innovate better. Now, in order to achieve that, and when you have hundreds of applications, how do you move them to the cloud and what are the benefits, right? So, number one, you want to make sure that there is an efficient process. So what you do is you look at all the different stacks or technologies that you have across all your applications and figure out an automation mechanism that will work across all of them, and then use a scalable process. So the scalable process in the sense that you should be able to say, I want to move 10 applications in the next 3 months, and you should be able to achieve that. The way you do that is ensure that it's a repeatable process that can be scaled using multiple teams working in parallel. It doesn't matter who does the migration, the result will be the same. So now you can run parallel threads in the factory. So you can say, hey, I'm going to have 100 applications moved in the next 1 year, and you could have maybe one or two or maybe 10 different teams doing the same thing, migrating these applications. The factory will ensure that all of them are following the same process. They will go through the same security checks, same configuration best practices, and also same quality checks, and they will have the same kind of observability when it goes to the cloud. So it will all look the same. Now, this will improve your time to market, and it will also reduce your cost because it's a repeatable process. You're not reinventing the wheel again and again. There is a common team that is taking care of all the tasks, or common set of teams that are taking care of all the tasks, and it's a repeatable process. So you can repeat as many times as you want, and you can set, since it is a repeatable process that can be scaled using multiple teams, you now have the ability to set the throttle. You can say how many parallel threads you want to run based on your budget and goals.
Yeah, so you get much more control.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that control over spend in these times that we live in, where the budgets are getting cut, is very important for any business leader, actually.
That is right. It is the timing is, if you look at today's world, there is, when you look at cloud skills, it's tough to hire people because there is not enough people in the in the industry with the right skills. So a factory-based approach helps there as well, in terms of, because it's a repeatable process, you can get people trained, and we will ensure that all of them are following the same process. That's what the factory brings you.
Yeah. So, yeah, we know that migrating those applications can be quite challenging, but how does the cloud migration factory handle these challenges? So, can you show us the process that you follow?
Yes. So I have a slide here for the process. So this is a process. This the bottom part is kind of proprietary to us, but you can follow the similar process with any tool or any cloud that you want to migrate to. See, on the top is basically the first part, which is planning and setting up the factory. So here, what we are doing is we are saying, we are going to figure out, what applications are going to be migrated, and for that, you're going to do some application rationalization. That means when you look at applications, let's say you have 100 applications, not all of them might be a candidate for cloud, because some of them might be end of life, you want to phase out. Some of them might not be relevant in the new businesses that you're getting into. So you want to use a combination of rationalization and prioritization to figure out what need to be moved in Q1, Q2, Q3 of your migration. And then you put together the project plan. Now, while this is going on, you want to create what we call as a landing zone, and that landing zone is where these applications are going to be migrated into. Landing zone is a cloud term used by most cloud providers. This is an account under the cloud provider where your applications reside. So it's a virtual environment, which means you need to set the right policies in place to make sure that it is secure and it is your own. So here, preparing the landing zone itself is a huge task. There are best practices and there are documents out there for from each cloud provider that you can follow. So in our case, we have a set of templates that we run that to create the landing zone, so to speed up the process. So while the planning, rationalization, prioritization, and project plan is being set up, the factory team will basically set up the landing zone, and the landing zone will have all the best practices implemented. It will be secure, and it is ready to accept the applications. Now, one of the key features that you want to enable in the landing zone is the automation. So in form of CI/CD. So that means any changes that need to be deployed after the migration is done it should be deployed automatically. So you need to set up an automated CI/CD process. And in the cloud, you also want to ensure that there is sufficient observability, meaning you don't want the developers or operations team constantly getting into the landing zone to troubleshoot things. So that means once the application is running, there should be sufficient observability set up. There are tons of tools out there. Pick the right one that fits for you, fits your needs, and make sure that it is embedded into your process, so that when an application is live, your team can just go to the observability dashboard and look at how the application is running. Now, this is the planning phase, right? So, and the factory setup. Then for each application, in our case, what we do is we look at each application, do a technical review, create a technical review document. Based on that, we use a template-based approach to migrate applications. That's our unique selling point. We can accelerate your application migration using our templates. We have more than 150 templates that we manage today. So what our engineers does is we look at the technical review, find the right template, and then we use our platform to create an auto pipeline. And that pipeline will basically create the images, create all the artifacts required, and deploy to the cloud. And then you can go and get and check the application, see if it is functioning properly. And if it doesn't, iterate, make the fixes, repeat it. And then once you're satisfied, you can go live, right? So this is kind of high level functions of a factory. Now, based on the tool that you're using, the steps might be different, but it's important that you create a repeatable process that you can scale up.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the beginning, let's say. How do you decide which applications are the best fit to start? So what are the factors you look into when picking that application?
A good question. So when you, as part of the rationalization and prioritization, and this is under the umbrella of planning, you want to look at certain factors. Number one, is this application worth moving into cloud? Right. That's number one. If it is something that you are going to phase out, if it is not worth putting in the cloud, don't do it. Right. It's because there is effort, and once it is in the cloud, it's going to chew up a lot of resources, and your bill is going to go up. You're going to pay for it. So you want to ensure that this the application is something it's worth moving to cloud. Number one. Number two, it is you want to ensure that the dependencies are in place, right? So, for example, if one application is moving, and if that application is using other services from other applications, you want to ensure that those applications are moved as well. Now, moving those dependent applications, there are a couple of ways to do it. Excuse me, a couple of ways to do it. Number one, you could re-architect them into simple microservices. That's a modern way of doing it. You can take those applications, take the services, convert them into microservices, then move them. Or you can move it as is. So we support both, and we have seen customers doing both approaches. If there are inefficiencies and if there are changes that you want to do to your application, there is a chance that you will want to modernize it or rewrite it. But if it's something that you don't want to touch, you want to use it as it is possible as well. Now, when selecting applications from a technology standpoint, there are challenges as well. If you look at the cloud today, most of the cloud providers, Linux is one of the most popular and efficient applications that you can move. So if it's a Linux application if it runs in Linux and it was developed during the last 10, 15 years, definitely a good candidate to move. Windows applications are also good, but some Windows applications are challenging. For example, one of the challenges that we constantly run into is .NET framework to .NET Core. .NET Core is cloud friendly. .NET framework is challenging. So you want to look at the effort required to modernize it before moving to cloud. Now, running .NET framework code as it is, there are some challenges. The numbers might not be as efficient, but you can still do it, but it'll be a bit more challenging. Now, legacy applications that are not compatible with the Intel platform that's provided by cloud, those need to be refactored or rewritten. And we provide that as a service as well. So when you set up the factory, keep that in mind, that if there are legacy applications that are still need to run there, you want to, as during the planning phase, you want to make sure that you you look at those applications and their technology and see if you can set up a team that can actually convert them into cloud compatible workloads. So those are some of the factors. And so again, I want to remind everyone there is a white paper that we have that gets in more detail about what we are discussing today. So you can use the QR code on the top left corner to kind of download it.
Yeah. So I see that some questions are dropping in, but yeah, I want to also ask you, how long does the planning phase take, and how long does it take to exactly go through the first part of the process?
Good. So the way we approach things is that so when we look at a new customer, we first suggest a pilot. Now, the reason why we do a pilot is to ensure that we can set up that first planning phase. We can figure out what challenges we are going to run into, right? So it's always good to start with the pilot. So the pilot can be one application to maybe 5 applications. Take a good sample, not more than 5 apps, and go through a process of migrating it and putting it in the cloud, right? So when you pick those 5 applications, ensure that you have a good blend of technologies. So by doing the going through the pilot process, you get a pretty decent sense of a what how to scale it up. Now we have a template-based approach. We have set policies and we have trained engineers who can look at the applications and pick those five, 1 to 5 applications. So we start with that initial pilot. Once the pilot is done, we put together a plan. Now, in most cases, the pilot would be like 2 months, and you don't want to go beyond that. So most of our pilots that we have done so far are 1 to 2 months. And in that 1 to 2 months, we study the current environment, the new requirements for the new environment, and come up with a plan. And the planning phase will take another 2 to 3 months to put together the factory plan. So the answer to the question is the total time will be between 2 to 5 months, including the pilot.
Great. Thank you for answering that. So I have a question from Abdi. What are the strategies to release from legacy monolithic factory system when moving to the cloud?
So can you repeat that question again? Let me see if I can pick that question.
So what are the strategies to release from legacy monolithic factory systems when moving to the cloud?
Okay. So let me try to answer it this way, right? So when we go live, right? So going live meaning releasing an application complete to the cloud. I'm hoping that's the question. It's a challenging. You have to cut over from the current application to cloud. Now, to do that, the best option is to run it in parallel for sufficient time so that you can test it out, right? And then you cut over. So during that period, sometimes, for example, if it is a simple application, you can do daily replication of data and make sure that the cloud version is good. Now there are cases where live applications need to be synced in a real-time basis. So there are techniques to do that. For example, let's say you have an application that's running on-prem and only a few pieces are going and you want to go make it live. So you will have to build a real-time syncing mechanism, a synchronized replication mechanism. And we have templates to do that. And we have done that with other customers where the live application will go live, but both are functional at the same time. And because it's syncing in real time, you can cut over anytime. Now, in cases where you cannot do that, you will have to take a snapshot of the data, and over a maintenance window period where no customer is using the system, you'll have to cut over. So those are a couple of ideas, and there are, and it also go, you have to look at case by case and figure that out as well, based on what the requirements are.
Yeah. So another question, this time from Atul. What considerations should organizations keep in mind when migrating sensitive or regulated data to the cloud? And how does the Cloud Migration Factory address these concerns?
Very good question. So we have to assume that most of the enterprise, or at least a good chunk of enterprise, will have sensitive data, and the way to look at that is you consider every a piece of data that you have as sensitive, right? And again, there are different levels you can set, but you don't want any data to get exposed. Now, the best way to deal with that is use a repeatable process, which is standardized, and make sure that your landing zone is in compliance with all the best practices and security guidelines from the cloud as well as from the industry. So setting up that landing zone, setting up that process that is automated in place before you actually even start the factory is important. So the landing zone will give you a good kind of perimeter security, and you want to ensure that there is sufficient monitors in the landing zone, so any policy changes or unwanted policy changes, they're all monitored. So there are different techniques to do that. Please reach out to us. We can discuss more in detail. But the key is to have a secure landing zone with a standardized, repeatable process. And one other thing I would like to add is when you go to cloud, when you manage the cloud infrastructure, it's always better not to take the same processes that you have on-prem to the cloud when it comes to operations. You want a refined process because in the cloud, everything is software defined. The current process is more geared towards a physical infrastructure secured using a physical perimeter. That's not the case in the cloud. So it's very important to put your time and effort to ensure that the landing zone has good security policies, good alerting mechanisms, and ensure that the policies are intact and any unwanted changes are immediately alerted so that you can go and fix it. So that landing zone is very important. Having that automated process is very important. And once it is in place, you need to have a process that makes sure that all the policies are intact.
Awesome. So we have a question from Pradeep, and I think many people are thinking about this. So what are the typical pricing models for a cloud migration factory? So is it workload based, application based, or how does it work?
Good question. So again, I'll start with the different options and how we do it. Um, the industry standard approach is basically an army of people approach. That means there are several vendors that can bring you help in terms of cloud engineers who can come in, put the factory together, but they will use a manual approach. Now, the way we differentiate ourselves is we have an automated process. We use a template/tool based approach. So our pricing is by application. So we look at the pilot. After the pilot is done, during the planning phase, we will tell you exactly how much it's going to cost per application. Now, while doing that, what we do is we give you sizing. For example, typical sizings are small, medium, large, and each of them will have a price point. And so the idea is to move the applications in a fixed price model. Now, there are applications that will fall out of this three buckets. We call them modernize. Those are applications that need to be rewritten or re-architected. So for those, there will be a case-to-case basis, because the applications that do not fall in these buckets are usually challenging applications that you'll have to look at it case by case. So the pricing model is going to be, in our case, it's going to be a fixed price. I'm sure there are other partners or other service providers that can give you fixed price, but most of them give you a people-based approach, which is mostly time and material.
Awesome. So a few people have problems with downloading the white paper because the link doesn't show up. So don't worry about it. After the webinar is done, we will contact you and send you the white paper directly. Because, yeah, as you know, sometimes systems fail. So something didn't work as it should. So
I'll go to the last page. Here I think we have the QR code here as well. So please try this page, this QR code as well.
Yeah. So Nitu asked a different question that I think can be, where the answer can be quite valuable for the audience. Could you provide examples of successful enterprise cloud migration case studies and the lessons that you've learned from them?
Yes. So I don't want to get into the details here, but in our website, we do have case studies of migrations. And to give an example, we were able to migrate a healthcare company's portal, a patient portal, from on-prem to cloud in a matter of 10 weeks. And they went live in 10 weeks with all the compliance and everything in place. So the way we did that is, again, we used our templates. So as I said, we have more than 150 templates that we manage. This covers most of the applications that enterprise use, or application stacks the enterprise use. So we do have an accelerated way to do it, and we do all our migrations on fixed price. So please do reach out to us, and we'll be happy to discuss further.
Perfect. So we have actually a series of these webinars planned. So on the next session, we will go over the topic like how can organizations determine whether they are ready to implement the cloud factory approach or not. And all the questions that weren't answered today, you can contact Reggie directly on LinkedIn or contact them on their website.
Awesome.
I mentioned with the white paper, the team will contact you to send it over because, yeah, happens.
Yeah, I'm showing the QR code again. If you guys want to download it, please try again or just contact us. We'll be happy to get you the white paper.
Thank you for joining us today and hope you like it. And I hope you'll join next webinar.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.